streamline that better, what does life look like after that? I want advisors to try to imagine what they're doing now, typically, and what it could be like,
Right.
after getting some help.
Sure. I mean, it really depends on what they're doing now, the types of systems they have. But simplistically, and I always, when I meet with people and I explain sort of what I do, or my friends and family say, what does Forms Logic do? I take them through a process of thinking about opening an account. So you're my client, and I go to you, David, and say, "Hey, let's create a partnership, and I have some accounts and some products I want to work with you on." And you go, "Yes, Joel, let's move forward." So the first thing I need to do is I need to generate paperwork, right? Because I need to start a process where I can actually process your business, which means a couple things. One, there's a list of paperwork that I need to gather to open the account. What type of an account is it? Is it an individual? Is it a joint? So I have to figure out what is the paperwork requirements for me to open an account based on our conversation. Number one. Number two, where's the data? I have to fill in. Unfortunately, this is still a very paper oriented, form oriented, data centric required industry, and I need to fill it out. So I need to gather all this information from you and fill it on these forms. And I need to make sure that it's filled in correctly and in the right places and that I have the right forms. So at that point, I've worked with you to gather all the information, making sure that I fill it out correctly. How do I know I filled it out correctly? How do I know that I filled out all the right forms? How do I know that I have the newest forms, right? All that information is something that I, as an advisor, am required to figure out, right? And at that point, now that I have the data and I have the forms filled out, what I think is right, I need to get signature. How do I do that? Do I print it all and then meet with you? Do I have to FedEx it to you and say sign here and put little stickies everywhere? And then making sure that you do sign it correctly. If you do sign it manually and send it back to me, what happens if you miss something? What if I go back and realize that you missed a signature? Right? Well, what if I want to do electronic signature? Well, great. Maybe I can do electronic signature and send it to you. But what happens if your spouse doesn't have an email address, which, believe it or not, happens, and that's a requirement for e-sign. So there's all these things that you have to consider to prepare to open an account with a client. Every one of those is a potential roadblock for you getting that account open. And the whole purpose of us getting an account open is getting the account ready so funds can come in. They can be custodied at a firm, whether it's at a Fidelity or a Schwab or a Pershing. So then I can start processing and actually generating income for you. Okay. So that's the process that it might take to open an account. Hopefully that paints a good picture.
It does. Let me clarify one thing,
Sure.
or emphasize one thing that I think is important is all of these pieces of paper, let's call them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there's seven of them. You're writing their name in seven times. You're
Correct.
writing their address in seven times, right? And as I go and analyze advisors' businesses, one of they may be super buttoned up, but the majority of the time, excuse me, the majority of the time, their onboarding process, time and time again, I'm sorry, but it sucks.
Yeah.
It's manual, it's clunky. You have this client that's at an exciting moment in their life and their decision making, and then it's like, all right, brace yourself. It's time to onboard.
Right.
So it can take a great experience up to that point and have the pendulum swing in the wrong direction during onboarding because I've noticed it's so clunky. So now with your Navigator
Sure.
service and product, how does that change moving
Sure.
forward?
Yeah. No, that's, you teed it up perfectly, of course, as expected. So again, I took you through an experience of all the pitfalls and all the risks, right? Of data, manual data, reentry, duplication process. So what does Forms Logic do? Forms Logic, obviously from an automated system, is the first thing we do is we understand what the form requirements are. So when you come into our system, first of all, whether you're in a CRM, you're in a Redtail, you're in a Smart Office, a Wealth Box, you can launch. And again, usually your CRM is your gold source of data. So you've already met with the client. You've already probably gathered all their information that might be in your CRM. And what you can do is you can run that instantly from your CRM to launch forms logic. You're simply going to ask some basic questions. What type of client is it? What type of an account? Is it a joint account? Is it a direct account? Who the vendors are? We do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes intelligently, basically to say, okay, based on your needs, what type of forms are required to open this account? So we automatically will present those forms for you in a bundle, what we would call a work item or a workflow. And we will take all the data that is in your CRM, as you mentioned, and automatically populate those forms. And to your point, David, if there's 11 forms in a packet and there are 22 times where I need to fill in the client's name, it will auto populate all 22 of those. So normally if you're manually or in some situation where you have some kludgy type system, it could take you 30 minutes to gather all the data. The way we do it is when we push that data directly into forms logic, it will pre-populate those forms within 3 seconds. That doesn't mean all the data is complete. You may still have to add additional data onto those forms. But the first step is, do I have the right forms in the bundle, right? I don't want to miss any forms. Have I populated all the data that I have generally available in the right places on the forms? And also, more importantly, do I have the right forms? Do I have the most updated forms? I had a client just the other day that had a form that was, they were NIGO, not in good order, because they had a form that was dated. And even though they went out and filled it out and got it signed by the client, turns out that it was NIGO because it was an older form. The form hadn't been updated. We make sure that we have the most updated forms in our repository. So not only do we have the right forms for the work type or registration, we have the newest and correct forms, and we pre-populate all the data. The next step is making sure that the client has filled out the forms correctly. What does that mean? Well, we have required fields. We know what is required on those forms. So we make sure that the information is filled out correctly. There are situations where you think you filled it out because that's what you know, and you fill it out, you get signature, you send it to the back office, and they're saying, no, you're missing the suitability information, or you're missing a date of birth or employment information. We actually make sure that as you're going through that process and reviewing the forms, your data is in good order. So if you've missed something, the system will say you're missing employment information. You can't pass go until you fill that in. So that's another area where we help solve and make sure that there's efficient process for the advisor. The next step again is, now that I've got the forms that are correct, I filled it out correctly, how do I get signature? But we make it really simple. We have an integration with e-sign vendors. Generally, most people use DocuSign. It's all pre-integrated. Our system knows who needs to sign where, so we don't have to put yellow stickies. And advise, if when we send a packet to a client, the system knows where they need to sign. They'll never miss a signature in a bundle because the system electronically, because of our integration with DocuSign, we know where they need to sign, which is a real important component. Now, if they want to print it, we have the capability for them to print it, wet sign it, and upload it back into our system. So it's basically a universal capture mechanism. Whether they're e-signed or wet signed, they'll come into the system. That process can eliminate many, many hours of data management, NIGO processing. Our job is hopefully really on the front end to eliminate NIGOs down into the low single digits. That's our goal. We have clients that have been in the 30, 40, 50%. And after using our system, they can drop it into the low single digits.
Well, I mean, not to oversimplify that, but even it sounds so silly, but even not having to type out or copy and paste the name 12 times, like
Right.
that in and of itself is, it's just that redundant layer of work that you as the advisor or the advisor's team member who does it, it's like, don't you want them working on higher level stuff than copy and
Right.
pasting a name 12 times? You
Right.
know, and
Yeah.
obviously the benefits of uh, not slowing down the process because A, it's sped up in the first place, but B, it's higher likelihood that the documents are accurate so that it actually gets processed, as opposed to the NIGOs can add a day or two, a week or two, depending on turnaround times, and it's just your time kills deals.
Time kills
And
deals, time kills deals commission because that's more time that your assets aren't deployed, which means you're not generating income while it's not being deployed. So you're right. And then you have a client that you're starting a relationship with that's
it's a
dissatisfied
bumpy
because now you
road.
have, yeah, you got to call them and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I need to resend this to you. Why? Why didn't you get it done the first time? I mean, I'm paying you for a service. I would expect you to be more efficient. So yeah, it's a very
Right.
slippery road for sure.
Let's go through the same before and after for the advisor transitions, and just because I know this, I'll tee
Yeah.
it up for you.
Yeah.
I also want you to share how it can generate more money or save lost revenue, because you're able to speed up the time of the transition. But walk us through what typically happens and how you could help.
Right. Yeah. And again, I'll talk about the back office processing too, because whether you do it through transitions or you do it on our new account opening using the Navigator tool, it's the same process, which I think we want to talk about too, because that's also something we satisfy too to help create a back office operational efficiencies. But on the transition side, I mean, this is something I've had a passion for probably for 15, 20 years, both here, both at Forms Logic and when I was at DocuPace, because it can be, it's not a silent killer because it does affect it, but 10% of advisors transition every year, which means there's a massive flow and movement of people. And when I mean people, it's not just the advisor, it's the people that are the clients, it's all the accounts, it's all the paperwork that needs to get processed. When I was talking about Navigator, I'm talking about a single transaction, right? It's me talking to David and saying, hey, listen, I want to open up one account or maybe a couple accounts. But now when we talk about an advisor transition, I'm moving the entire book of business. So that's me going to David, me going to Sally, me going to Jim and everybody and saying, hey, by the way, I'm changing firms. This is going to be good for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, right? This is something in his anecdotally, I had my own advisor go through a transition, which was really interesting because they took me through the process and I watched them live it and I watched them articulate why they did it, how they were going to do it, what it was, the impact was going to look like. So I lived what it's like going through an advisor transition. That being said, an advisor is not dealing with one client's set of paperwork. They could be dealing with 150 clients and they need to do them all at the same time. So when we talk about the process of going through one account opening for one client, in the end, when you transition an account from one firm to another, you're basically reopening that account, which means you're going through the process. There are different types of account openings depending on where you transition from, but the concept's the same. I take every account for every one of my clients and I have to repaper them. That can be a very significant process. We just talked about what it would take to do one. Now, if I have 150 clients, that could be 400 accounts. If I have 300 clients, that could be 1,000 accounts. That is a very, very time sucking process, but 10% of the advisors do it every single year. And it seems like it's even increasing more. There's a lot of consolidation. There's a lot of movement right now. How do you make that process clean and simple? When I call David and say, hey, David, I'm moving from one firm to another, you've been my client for 5 years. Don't worry about the process. It's going to be really easy. You're just going to sign a couple documents and we'll be gone and you'll have the new process and the new benefits of the new firm. Okay, David trusts Stroll as my advisor, make it work. Well, what happens if all of a sudden I get in this process and I have to call David and say, hey, David, I'm sorry, we had some paperwork process issues, or there's going to be about a 30-day gap where it's going to be sort of, I can't really tell you what's happening because we're in the middle of a process. David's going to be to me, you're going to come to me and say, what kind of racket are you guys running? Right. So that being said, all the risks of a transition, which is from an advisor's perspective, it's very, while they're doing it, there's reasons why they do it. Some make a lot of money, some are changing for personal reasons. It's a very stressful time for advisors. We have been able to reduce that stress a lot using our Migrator tool. How do we do it? So The concept is because we already know how to consolidate, we know what types of accounts are required, we know what type of forms are required. What we can do is we have another tool, our Navigator, Migrator tool, excuse me, which is basically a consolidation tool. So we work with the advisor, whether it's a single advisor, it's multiple advisors. We can gather all their data. We're experts at gathering the data. We can take disparate data in multiple locations. We can consolidate it. We can normalize it. We can scrub it. So take data, because again, you might have it in your CRM. You might have it in Allbridge. You might have it in your old desktop solution. We take all that data that you have and we consolidate it into our master spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet has all the data requirements for opening up those accounts. Once we've gathered all that information, all that data, we load it into our system. Like we were doing with those single accounts, what we can do is we can load those 300 accounts automatically. So when we load that spreadsheet, we pre-build all 300 accounts for those clients. We already know what the forms are. We have the most updated forms. We have all the data. So we automatically pre-build all those 300 accounts. We load in all the data. We identify if there's any missing information. So we basically have a missing data tracker in our system that says for this account, you're missing 4 fields. So the advisor knows as they're preparing for this transition, they have all their paperwork already pre-built and they know where their gaps are. So if they do need to go and speak with a client, they can gap those missing pieces of information. So this is all pre-affiliation usually. So we're working with the advisor to help them get ready. So on that affiliation day, they can mass send out all their paperwork. So what can, and last thing, what can normally take 60, 90 days,
I was just going to ask this question.
yeah, I mean, because it's really the most important thing. What's it mean to me? Why do I want Forms Logic to help me as an advisor? We can get you from the day we meet, we can have you ready to send out in 3 to 4 weeks. A lot of it depends on the commitment of you and the data you have, but in the your willingness to move quickly. But generally, we like to say from the day we meet to the day you affiliate, within 30 days, you are ready to send out. And we've had a couple of 10 days even.
Well, and it's also that's all in preparation for the transition, but on the day of the transition, you in effect click a button and then boom, all the paperwork's out to the clients, correct?
We can
That's
do that. Yeah, we have the
yeah.
ability to say send out all 300. We have a lot of best practices. We've been doing this for 4 years now at Forms Logic. Since I started, we've been doing it. So we've been very good at communicating with the advisors what the best practices are. Normally, they don't like to send it all 300 because they know they might get 200 phone calls. So we work with them and kind of give them best practices on how to submit those. Some
Hmm.
actually, we've had a couple that have wanted to print out all of them. It really depends on the person, the process, the practice on how they want to do it. But we know because we've done this so many times, the best based on the advisor and their needs, how best to go at it on affiliation day.
One thing
Um,
as a an idea as a client gift, if they print them all out, you can get them a bag of seeds to replant all those trees.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, one client actually, again, a lot of our best practices are through anecdotal information, right? That's the whole back. The beauty of having done this so many times is we have a lot of different best practices. One is I had a client who they had 800 accounts, but like the majority of their clients were based in their city. So what they did is they had a signing party. They basically 2 days they rented out a restaurant or a bar near their offices, and they brought in all their clients. And over the course of 2 days, they signed 87% of the paperwork.
Sweet.
Yeah. I mean, it's one approach. That was their approach. Some clients are like,